Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day. It's Cassie here, back with another card tutorial here on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be using this beautiful stamp set. This is by Spellbinders from their Cardmaker 2 collection. This one's called Love Never Fails, and it is gorgeous. They sent this to me, so we're going to make something fun with it. I have a piece of watercolor cardstock. This is cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, so the full front of an A2 size card, and I've actually flipped it over. So this is on the smooth side, and right now I don't really have a real plan. What I'm doing is I'm pulling off some of those flowers and I'm sticking those down. I guess my only plan is that I wanted there to be a cluster of flowers and leaves down in that lower left-hand corner. So I've put this in my MISTI, and I have pulled out some distress inks. Since this is a brand new stamp, I'm conditioning it with my hand, but I'm using distress inks, and I know typically distress inks are not formulated for stamping, but we are going to do something cool with it. So that first color that I used is Festive Berries. It's so pretty, so pretty. I pulled out a few colors that I thought would look good together, kind of maybe look like a fall combination, maybe not, I don't know. You tell me what you think in the comment section down below. Regardless, I think it looks great together. So this next color that I've chosen is Seedless Preserves. And then we're going to clean that up, and I'm going to start bringing in some of the leaves. I do bring in one more color for some flowers, and I'm okay with things kind of overlapping. I don't want it to overlap too much because we're going to do a watercolor technique with this, and so I don't want those colors they're going to bleed into each other a little bit, and I don't want them to go too crazy. And we are going to be using some greens, and if you know anything about color theory, greens and reds typically will make a brown. So you do need to be a little bit careful about the colors that you choose. And the yellow that I bring in, that can make a brown with that purple that I have. So we're going to try to be a little bit careful here. This first greenish color that I've grabbed is Evergreen BOUGH, and then I'm going to use Forest Moss on those other leaves. And I think this looks kind of cool. I'm not in love with it right now, but I definitely will be later. We'll clean that off, and this is where I decide I need to bring in that yellow a little bit. So I'm going to bring in a couple more petals, and we're going to stick those down. Just kind of placing them, like I said. It's okay if they overlap a little bit, but I do want some of those pops. And then I'm going to have another leaf over here on that lower right-hand side. So once I've figured out my combination here, we'll pick up the rest of those stamps and then close the door of the MISTI to pick these ones up. And then we'll grab out some fossilized amber. No, this one's mustard seed, my bad, mustard seed, and then some more of that forest moss. Close the door, and I do like how that looks. I think those colors together look pretty good. We're going to clean this up, and it's at this point that I decided I'm going to flip this because I do want something in the upper right-hand corner. Originally, I didn't want that, but now that I'm looking at it, I feel like it needs a little bit more. I want to frame up where I'm going to put my sentiment, and so this is just a good way to do this. It's going to be a lot less flowers, a lot less foliage, but it is going to be a little something so it'll help your eye to kind of draw around, and it won't leave as much white space, although I do like a lot of white space. So we've put down a couple of flowers. Now we're going to bring in some of our greenery. And again, we're using all the same colors that we've used previously. And everything that I've used, I'm going to have linked down below in the description box. Just hit that little arrow, the down arrow, and it'll open up that description box and you can check out all the products that I've used. So close the door of the MISTI, and I'm happy with that. So I am going to stamp a few more flowers. Just on a scrap piece of that same kind of watercolor cardstock. And I'm only going to use the Seedless Preserves and the mustard seed. Originally I was thinking I would bring in more Festive Berries, but I do have a good amount stamped of the Festive Berries, and I wanted to bring in a little bit more of that mustard seed. So here's where the magic happens. I'm spritzing this with water, like a few spritzes, only like 2 or 3 spritzes, and I'm just kind of watching and seeing what that water does. It is going to move because distress inks are reactive to water, and I'm watching it, kind of keeping an eye, because they will start to spread a little bit more into each other, which is fine. I don't mind that. But once I'm happy with how that is, I'm going to bring in my heat tool so I can slow down that process of the spreading, and I'll dry that up. It has buckled the paper a tiny bit, but not enough. And even when it does that, what you can do is kind of dry it mostly in the front, and you'll notice maybe it starts to warp a little bit. Just flip over your paper and you can heat it that way as well, and that will help with some of that warping. So I'll just keep doing that back and forth until everything is nice and dry and we can move on to our next part, which is some pops of black. This is where I'm going to bring in some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. It is a black pigment ink, and I'm going to stamp that using the various centers that are in this Love Never Fails stamp set. And I'm going to cover that with a clear embossing powder. This is a fine detail clear embossing powder called ICICLE. It's by Brutus Monroe. And I'm going to stamp just the various centers, like I said. And I, didn't really have it picked out exactly which ones I was doing. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here, which is kind of how I do a lot of my stamping. Sometimes I plan stuff out, but in this case I was like, let's just play, let's just have fun. And it was a day I totally needed it. So once I've gotten all of those, I'm going to then cover the rest of these with that clear embossing powder. And I figure while I have it all out and I'm done here and I'm done with the other one, I'm going to pull in the sentiment that I plan to use. Now this stamp set has some amazing sentiments in it. I love this stamp set for that reason, even more than I love the flowers. I mean, I love the flowers, but these sentiments are great. Sending Prayers is one I use so often. I absolutely love it. So now I'm going to heat set this till that is smooth and melted. And I love that crisp black that you get using that fine detail embossing powder along with your crisp black pigment ink. It looks so good on top of that watercolory look that I'm already just like falling for this. I'm going to fussy cut out these 3 flowers. Not really that concerned about the spreading. What it really does for me is it softens those edges, which is what I really like. And we're going to end up popping those onto our card with a little bit of foam tape. And I'm just strategically placing those on there. I say strategically, and there really is no strategy. I'm just sticking them down where I think they look good. And it doesn't matter if they're popped off the side. We can trim that off later. And I actually like that look because it gives the illusion that there's more going on outside of the card. So we'll pop down this last one on that upper right hand, and then we'll trim off the excess. And it's at this point that I've decided this needs more. So I'm going to do some splatter. I'm going to bring in some gold paint that I have, watercolor paint, put a little water in that, and then I'm going to splatter that all over my background. I'll have the paint linked down below as well, but it's just a gold and it just really goes so nicely with that watercolor background and that crisp black. I'm bringing in this cardstock from my stash. I don't know what it is. It was cut down to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, scored at 4.25. So that's going to give us an A2 size card. And I decide I do want some of that to show. So I'm going to trim off about 1/8 of an inch on both of my long sides. It isn't going to change much. It's just going to take a little bit extra off of those. And that way I'll have that pop of color from my card base showing through. So I'll use my liquid glue and we're going to adhere down our card panel to our card base and leave a border on that right hand side of that card base. And I just love this. So there you have it. That is going to finish this off. I do have a blog post that goes along with this. If you are interested in that, I'll have that linked down below. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And big thank you to all of you for watching, subscribing, all those fun things. You guys are awesome. And I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.